Have you ever wondered how a daily journal can go from this to this? I'm Titleless Musings, and in this series, we will be exploring journaling, how to begin, my advice for you as somebody who has journaled for 4 years, and all the different things that come with the art of journaling. We'll discuss how to practice journaling, how to set up a journal, different pages you can add, and my best tips that I wish I had known when I started journaling. Welcome back to the second video in the Musings on Journaling series. Today in this video we will be discussing topics, tough subjects, and the rules on rules. We'll go deeper into depth on what you should or could write in your daily journal, tough subjects and how to broach those, and what I think about having rules in your journal. Without further ado, let's get straight into it with our first topic of what on earth do I write about? As we discussed in the first video in this series, you should generally write about you. Write about what you've been up to today, or your plans for the weekend. Perhaps there's a friend's birthday coming up, so you should write about what you got them or where you're going with them. Write about a cool book you read at the library, or pick a quote from it and talk about why it was cringe to you. Pick anything in life that is going on or that you see around you and write about it. This, to me, is why journaling is so beautiful. It's such a touching space to personally express the way you are seeing the world and how your day was so different than any of the other 8 billion people who also had a day today. Anything goes in journaling, anything at all. You can be serious and write about current events or what's going on at work, or you can be silly and journal about ridiculous names of animals or why a certain color just really irks you. Whatever it is that comes to mind that makes you want to talk about it or that is demanding your attention is a valid topic that you should journal about. Exploring these thoughts in journals also allows you to come up with more ideas on what you want to write, perhaps branching into more topics that you can then discuss further. When it comes to journaling, it is such a personal hobby that some things that I journal about may just not resonate with you. However, I wanted to at least throw out some things that I journal about to get you started or potentially inspire you. As you can see on the screen now, I've just filmed a regular daily entry for me where I'm talking about the fact that I can't believe a month has already gone by. We're already a week into a new month. This is a typical topic for me. I will usually write about where does time go because I've captured so much time in my journals and it's interesting to analyze it. The thing I write about most is my day. Things that I've done, things that need to be done, things that I want to do, etc. I'll use things like receipts in my journal or tags from clothes if I've gone shopping that day, maybe photos if I've gone to an event or seen something really beautiful. Usually my daily journal consists of my daily life, everything that needs to be done and what I do about it in a day. For example, if I'm talking about YouTube in my journal, I might make a to-do list of here are the different shots that I need to get and when and what video they're going to be in. Another thing that I'll write a lot about is my feelings and emotions, particularly on specific subjects. For example, the other day I read an interview about my favorite K-pop group ENHYPEN, and I just thought it was really cute, so I wrote it down in my journal and made a spread about it, as you can see here now. Sometimes I'll hear a song that I want to document, so I'll write it down and write a little bit about why I like it, or I'll pick a lyric from it and draw something with it. Sometimes I'm just feeling some type of way, so I'll write that down and try and decipher why I feel like that. Is there something that's bothering me? Is there something that I need to tackle? Is there a weight on my mind that I can get rid of? Journaling really helps you explore your feelings and emotions and discover what it actually is that's on your mind. Another more fun topic I prefer to write about is YouTube videos I've watched, specifically if it's left me with thoughts or feelings on a topic. For example, recently I watched a video about media consumption and critical thinking and how that has changed since the early 2000s. And as an avid writer and consumer of media, I decided to spend a day writing my thoughts on that video essay. I wrote the video down, I wrote some of my own thoughts from it as well as some of the thoughts from the YouTuber and kind of analyzed what I thought of that video. In general, though, I like to write about anything and everything that encompasses my day. I'll write about traffic, or how nice it feels to put clean sheets on my bed. Literally anything that I've done in a day. I write it down because the act of writing has just become so cathartic to me that I can't live without it. Even the most mundane things in life tend to be interesting to me. I tend to find myself finding beauty in the boring. And it's just so nice to look back on it months or years later and see how some things I wrote about stayed in my life, or are still things that impact me. But other things that were really important to me at the time that I wrote about them have faded out, or are just a memory. Life really does change quick, and by writing it down, I've got to watch it change quite literally in real time over the last 4 years. When it comes to the question of, are there topics that you should avoid in journaling, I would like to say a resounding no. There is nothing you should avoid in journaling. But I also understand that everyone can be different, so I'm going to say that this is totally up to you. I personally don't avoid writing about anything in my journal, and I don't sugarcoat anything that I do write. The whole point of journaling for me is to be honest with myself, and that's what helps me grow and mature as a person, learn from my own mistakes, or analyze the way I acted in a situation. By not avoiding topics, I'm leaving everything on the table. I'm going to go into it with an open mind, and that'll help me grow and mature. However, I would say that if a topic is bringing you such mental distress that you feel like you can't write about it, or it's just really bringing you down, then perhaps that's a topic that shouldn't be analyzed in your journal. If, on the other hand, you just don't want to write about it because it's just taking too much time, then I would say write about it, but come back to it later. You can take a simple quick note and reanalyze the situation at a later date, perhaps when you have a clearer mind, but those are really the only exceptions that I would give. Otherwise, be as honest as you possibly can and don't limit yourself on what you can talk about. One thing that I haven't seen covered often on journal content creation is, how do you write through difficult times? Now, I will be talking a little bit later in this video about mental health, but with this I'm specifically talking about something like grief or a breakup, for example. My advice is going to be pretty general because we all go through these things differently, but here are some of my favorite personal tips that I wish I had known. First of all, you should not feel like you have to journal during these times. If you are really just going through it, don't feel like you have to then pull out your journal and sit down and write. While the benefits of journaling can still be found in those hard times, you also should listen to your own needs first and foremost. For me, there have been times that I've had to step back from journaling, process what I was going through, and then come back to my journaling when the words were no longer escaping me. Whatever your choice is, whether you choose to journal through a time or not, that is totally a personal choice, and don't let anybody else decide that for you. You need to decide if you are comfortable with journaling or not. If you decide that you want to use your journal as a pillar of support through a difficult time, then my second tip for you would be to start slowly. You do not have to follow your quote-unquote regular journal routine when you are going through a hard time. For me personally, I really like using bullet points. I will take about 10 bullet points a day. I'll write down the things that I did, things that need to get done related to the topic or the hard time that I'm going through, and that will be my daily entry because sometimes that's all we can muster. Do not feel like you need to sit and write essays every day. A few bullet points just to get the word flowing is enough. My third bit of advice is, when you can, allow yourself to process your feelings on paper. If this takes a day, perfect. Start exploring those feelings and write them down, and allow yourself the freedom from the mental weight of it all. If that takes a week, that is perfectly fine as well. Whenever you're ready to, write about how you feel, what happened, what you need, and what is something you just need to let go of right now. Your journal is and should be a safe space for you to unravel your feelings and safely express yourself without judgment or worries. My last bit of advice is to remember to listen to yourself. If you're feeling this nagging thought that you need to write down just to stop thinking about it, pull out your journal and write it down, or simply write it down and come back to it later. If, on the other hand, the last thing you feel like you can do is write, then take a step back and allow yourself the grace of a break, and come back when you feel ready. One of the things I know personally is that it can be hard to even address what is causing this hard time. Sometimes those words just don't come, or they're too painful to say. Remember, with your journal, you can absolutely be vague and broad. You don't ever have to directly say what you're going through, and you can still process and write your feelings without it. However, you could also write it down somewhere small or on a blank page and then flip the page, so you know in the future what you were dealing with, but in the moment you've given yourself some distance from it. If your question is, what if I can't put the words down on paper because there's just too many words to think about? Something that has always worked for me is just to pick the first thought you think and write on that. For example, if you're going through a breakup, perhaps the first thought on your mind is, wow, I really miss spending time with my ex. Write that down. Why do you miss it? What is it about it that you miss? And then do the same with the next thought. So on and so forth until you feel like your mind is just that little bit clearer and you found some more peace. When writing about a topic as serious as mental health, it can be difficult to even know where to start. So start there. It can be very helpful to write out, this is a difficult subject to talk about, because that's a feeling, and a very valid one at that. That is a starting point for you to expand on. Why is it so hard? What do you feel you need to make it easier on yourself? What isn't helping you? As with anything with journaling, you just have to pick a point or a thought and start there. A big tip I have for writing up mental health is don't try to analyze everything all the time. For example, maybe pick a day a week to go over your recent thoughts and feelings, or if you're struggling with mental health, write about that on a Saturday, for instance. But don't make yourself feel like it has to be the only thing you talk about all the time. Similarly, when you decide that you're going to write about it, don't feel like you need to write about it all at once. You can break that up over multiple entries, multiple months, multiple years even. When it comes to actual topics, you can write about what you're feeling and what's making you feel that way. You could write about therapy and analyze your latest session to help yourself remember the advice you were given. You can literally take anything about mental health that is on your mind and write about it and explore it. Track your symptoms and triggers if that is something you feel comfortable with tracking. There are a ton of really brilliant trackers online that you could take inspiration from. Or you could track what makes you feel better, whether that's life changes or something simple like a TV show that makes you happy. Another thing I can offer as helpful is prompts. Especially with mental health, prompts have really helped when you can't figure out where to begin. There's a ton of these online as well. I encourage you to look through them and pick one that seems to really connect with you. You can always write more and change the subject, as I myself do, but a prompt can give you a great place to start. If you're new to the practice of journaling, you've probably heard the claims that journaling helps mental health, and you may be wondering, outside of science, does it really? Do everyday people really feel like their mental health has improved since they began journaling? Well, yes. Most people you ask this to will probably give you some form of a yes. Whether that's a yes because they've been journaling to track mental health episodes and symptoms, or whether they're just more aware of their emotions and reactions, it just helps. Journaling does have benefits for mental health that go way beyond scientific studies. For me, journaling has helped me call out what I'm feeling and when, and learn what possible triggers I have. Speaking broadly, if I'm feeling unnaturally anxious, I'll write that down, and I'll write down the side effects I have from being anxious. And usually in that exploration of help me, I'm anxious, I'll write because this is going on. If, on the other hand, I can't name what it is that's causing me to feel a certain way, I can at least track it by writing down what I'm feeling when and looking for causation later. Alongside this ability to track and identify your mental health, journaling may make you more emotionally well-rounded. As a human being, we're always going to feel the full extent of the human experience. But as a journaler, you now have a place to put those feelings and thoughts and find ways to deal with them that are less immediate. For example, if you're angry at someone, instead of lashing out, maybe you internalize it. Now say, instead of just internalizing that forever, you write that down and you identify what made you angry. You can get out those initial angry reactions you would have had and feel better. Now you can work on a more helpful way of handling a problem. Come up with a way to say how you felt to that person without fighting. And if you do react immediately, you can still use your journal after to write about why and how did that make you feel and what would you have done differently. While journaling, especially through hard times as we've discussed in today's video, you may be wondering how you can stay conscious of your own mental health while you write. I have a few things that I do personally that may help you. First, Try and remind yourself that the good and the bad will balance. For me, every page I have that's talking about something heavy or deep, I have 2 pages of great memories and fun times. Or even if that's too small, for every journal I have that makes me feel down, I have another journal crammed with fun events and happy stories of things I've done. Especially when you're in a slump, it's important to remember that it will pass and these things will balance. If you're having a hard time with that, or you haven't journaled long enough yet to have something to look back on, try and blend your positives and negatives in your entries. For instance, if you're journaling about your mental health and how negative it's making you feel, try to end the entry on a positive note. What's something good that happened to you today? Did you read a nice story? Did you get exactly what you were craving for lunch? Things that are good don't have to be huge, they just have to be good for you. My third bit of advice that I use is remember to watch out for yourself and how you're feeling. If you're journaling during a difficult time, it's perfectly natural to feel down about it, especially while you're writing. But if that continues or stays with you, make sure that you have places and people to turn to other than your journal, because you deserve that love and support. Something else I remind myself of is that I can journal about whatever I need to journal about, and that doesn't always have to be serious feelings and mental health. If I'm feeling really bummed out and it's really getting to me, I'll stop and take a break, go flip through social media, go watch my favorite K-pop group, go out and watch birds. And usually something will come to me or inspire me. I'll journal about a cool bird I saw, or a funny meme I scrolled upon, or a lyric in a song that just really stayed with me. Journaling is a place for you to be you, whether that's emotions and feelings or just the things in life that move you. Keep that in mind and you'll likely feel more connected to journaling and safer to do so while being conscious of your own mental health. I wanted to include the topic of rules in this video because we've been going over what you should write about, how you should do it, etc. So with the question, should your journal have rules, I'm going to give you a pretty general no. I don't believe in putting rules on your journal, but that is just my opinion. Like with so many aspects, this will really come down to you. The question that I would ask myself is, why do I want to put rules in my journal? While rules can certainly help shape your journaling into something that feels accessible, you may run into the problem that you've put too many boundaries around yourself and what you want to write about. However, certain rules can be very helpful. A rule I had for myself when I started journaling was that I wanted to write a page every day. This helped me build consistency when I was beginning, and I eventually abandoned the rule when journaling became something I was confident and comfortable with. If, however, the rule is something like every day you're only going to be positive, you're not giving yourself the full opportunity to explore your day, explore your feelings, or discover some of the things that aren't always positive but that could become positive in the future. Some pros of having rules include the ability to become consistent, the ability to hold yourself accountable for building this habit, and the ability to shape your journal into something more personal than just a blank notebook. If you set rules around how much and how often you journal, this could aid in your consistency. You're making sure to hold yourself to a certain rule which increases how often you're journaling and helps you realize the benefits of your journal. Similarly with the shaping of a journal, if your rule is something like, every day I'm going to write one thing I'm grateful for, you're turning the journal from a notebook into your own personal space. However, the pros will come with cons as well. Cons include writing yourself into a corner, forcing yourself to journal when you can't or don't want to, burning yourself out unnecessarily, or becoming too hypercritical of something that should be as raw as possible. Setting rules around when and how much you can journal may force you to write when you don't want to or when you can't, which can mean you give up the habit because you're feeling pressure, not enjoyment. If you set rules around what you can write, you're being too critical on yourself and the thoughts in your head instead of letting them flow freely and then writing about them and sorting through them. With journaling being something that is so personal, this can lead to you completely giving up on the journal, as I myself did many times before eventually finding a way that it worked for me. If you're still considering rules in your journal, I implore you to try guidelines. Rules make it feel strict and like something that is boxing you in, something that you think you should do without being mindful of the things that can change as you continue journaling. On the other hand, guidelines can give you an idea of what you want to aim for in your journal without making you feel boxed into a corner. A good example I can give of this would be, instead of saying, my rule is that I will journal every day, have a guideline that you're journaling at least twice a week. This leaves it open to days that you don't feel like journaling, or perhaps something comes up, and you'll feel a lot more satisfied knowing you're guiding yourself to journal instead of forcing yourself to journal. If you're hearing this and saying, I want rules in my journal, then here are some that I've followed before. One rule that I've used in the past is that I would add one bit of color on every page. Sometimes I would highlight a word or write a sentence in a colored pen. Other times I would draw a little picture, and this would keep my entries from blurring together and made it more enjoyable to read. Another rule I followed before is that I would get all of my writing done before a certain hour. I felt like if I was doing this, I would have time to relax at night. Nowadays, I prefer to write at night, so this rule became obsolete. There are lots of other loose rules you could apply. For instance, you'll be truthful in your journal because it's a place for you to grow. Or perhaps you could apply the rule that you'll always write in black pen. Whenever you decide on rules for your journal, I strongly encourage you to look at guidelines or statements that are more encouraging than forceful, as this will help you stay consistent in the long run. As we wrap up the second video in this journal series, I hope that it has aided you in finding out what to write about, and more importantly, how. It is so courageous to take the time for yourself to work on self-betterment, whether that's handling something like grief in a journal, or simply trying to decide what constitutes a daily entry. Of course, the most important takeaway today is that all of this is entirely personal. There really is no way to do this wrong. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. Please do consider liking and subscribing to stay tuned with the series, and feel free to drop your questions or comments below. I'll be adding questions to upcoming videos to help you get better acquainted with daily journaling. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.